We're good.
When we joined the unit, there was only 2 men per squad left out of the original 8. They lost 6 out of the 8 to either death or wounded. And so they assigned 4 of us greenies, green orange, you know, to go with the 2 experienced troops, and they'd come back away from their main assignment. Then we were back in a kind of more of a back area, and so we went with them. And for a while we did some sorted out some new area there, South Manila, and then they sent us back up by Manila again, where these guys had been fighting. And one of our assistant squad leader, one of the sergeant told him that we were going back up to Ternate, where they had suffered all our casualties. He says, I just see the fear in his eyes. I don't want to go back to Ternate. And the sergeant says, well, that's where we're going. So we went back up there, and then the majority of the fighting, the heaviest fighting, had been completed there. But there was a lot of Japanese soldiers in the mountains and stuff around there. And so from Manila, they sent us, spread a bunch of us up and sent us south along parallel to the seacoast. And all of there weren't any roads there, it was just trails. You follow trails, and we couldn't go along the seacoast because there was, from the mountains, ridges had come down into the ocean, and the ocean had eroded it all away, and it was just straight ledges from the water straight up on all those places. So we had to go up one ridge and down the next, up one down the next, around there for several days, and looking for, trying to find Japanese soldiers that were still up there in the mountains. We found a few unlucky ones, a few dead ones, but at that point we didn't find any live ones. Before we started on that trip, the sergeant came to me one day and he said, here's your rifle, your new rifle. And it was a Browning automatic rifle, what they call a BAR. And it was a heavy one. It was just like, it weighed 21 pounds. And it had a bipod out on the front that about this long that you put down there, so if you're laying down, that would hold the front end of the gun up while you're shooting. I film it. And
oh, you're taking pictures. That's good. He's talking so fast I can't even catch you up.
I don't know if they can hear me or not either, because my voice is so soft, but they're going to try. And let's see now, I've forgotten your name. You're Maddie. And
Nikki.
And Nikki.
You kind of resemble each other.
I'm sure they must be related.
Yeah. Well, he is talking fast. I can't even keep up with him.
But anyway, we going down along. They called that a BAR rifle, and I told the sergeant, I said, "Hey, I'm the littlest guy on the squad. How come you're giving that big rifle to me?" And he said, "Well, it's yours. Let's take it." And I said, "Well, I'm supposed to have two guys to carry ammunition for me with that BAR, like machine gun, you know. Well, we don't have any extras for you." And I said, "Oh." Says, what you want, you carry. What you want to carry, you take.
I bet he was a little guy, too.
And anyway, I'd never been in combat before. And
do you want to sit? Do you want me to get you a tray?
And I didn't know.
Had to see.
I didn't know what we might run into, and I said, "Well, how much should I take?" He said, "Well, I don't know, just whatever you want to carry. It's up to you." So I loaded up pretty heavy, and I figured I was carrying counting the rifle and my pack, small pack, and my water, one quart canteen is all I had, and the ammunition. I figured I was carrying about 70 pounds. up those hills down there.
Now he's laughing about it.
It was a chore, but
I thought it was fun.
I found out since. No, that wasn't short. But anyway, when I was taking my training in Texas, out back up, we were out on the rifle range learning how to shoot a rifle, and I scored expert rifleman on the range. I guess what I got was shot 9 bulls out of 9 shots, down out of 9 in the bullseyes at 300 yards. That's the length of 3 football fields. And so that was on my records, and I'm sure they saw that, so they gave me that automatic rifle. Figured I could shoot straight. That was the guy that wanted me to have that important rifle there. And so it took me a few years to figure that one out, though. But anyway, I'm sure that's what happened. But we did get into some action after we'd gone through quite a few areas there. Why we came to a place where there was a water hole that had a bunch of foxholes dug around it, and the foxholes we dug were not 5 feet deep and 2 feet around. They were about the size of half of this table, and digging down about a foot and a half, and pile of dirt up around the edges. And there's at night, why we'd have 4 guys to the foxhole, or the hole they call it, and somebody would sit guard all night, and so there'd be 4 guys there, and 3 guys would curl up in there on their sides to try to get some sleep, and the 4th one would sit up in there, with legs crossed or knees bent up or whatever, to stay awake, stand guard for about 2 hours, and then you'd wake somebody else up, and you could lay down. And so we'd stand guard for 2 hours at night and try to sleep for 4 other hours. We were only down for about 6 hours at a time. And so that night, I'm telling you through the details about how it works there, but have you ever heard of a booby trap? Okay. What a booby trap is you set up some kind of an explosive device, and then some kind of a thing that will trip it and make it explode. Well, the only things we carried were hand grenades. That they call them pineapples because they all striped on the side, stripped, like a pineapple that you cut it, and they're about that long and about that big around, and they have a handle on it. And if you're going to throw that at the enemy, there's a little pin that with a ring on it that holds that handle down, so that the exploding cap won't go off. And when you pull that pin out and throw the hand grenade, why, there's a timed fuse of 4.5 seconds. And after 4.5 seconds, you'll hear that that thing pop when the handle flies off. And then you've got 4.5 seconds before it explodes, before the fuse burns into the explosion and just sends chunks of steel about 1 inch square, half-inch square, and about 1 inch thick, blows them in all directions to try to kill as many people as possible, and so on. Well, our guys, they set up some booby traps, tie a hand grenade onto a palm tree and down quite low, and then about 2 feet off the ground, and then they would have some small black wire, and they'd stretch it across from that tree to another one on the other side of the trail and tie it there. They'd tie the wire to that little pin on the hand grenade. So somebody can walk down the trail and hit that wire, it pulls the pin out, and there's 4.5 seconds before that hand grenade explodes. Well, we were camped on a water hole that I'm sure the enemy were using, and somebody had been there before us and had dug the foxhole, and then they pulled back. They sent us up there. but we're right close to quite a steep mountain, and there's trails coming off those mountains, down the mountain down in to the water holes.
Just before you need a drink.
Yeah. Thank you.
I had to do it before I started on that one.
Well, in quite short order, there was 4 of those booby traps. We heard them go off, and they had a bunch of them strung along. So there was a group of them coming down, and they were spread out. Well, when those hand grenades went off, I guess when they heard them pop, they knew what was going to happen. They turned and ran, and so it didn't hit any of them. They got away, or else turned and lit on the ground, and so they wouldn't hit them, and then they got away. The next morning, there was quite a large group of us there, a whole company of men. We started moving forward, and I was on the main trail going forward up through there, and just a few scattered trees and a few bushes and mostly grass and stuff like that. And we were going parallel to a small ravine that it was in the bottom. The width was maybe nearly as wide as this table, and sometimes only half the distance, in a sandy bottom up the bottom, and we were going parallel to that. We got up there a ways, and it turned across in front of us and went up to the mountainside. There was drainage coming down there. Well, when we were on our way up there, we didn't know what was ahead, but we'd gone a ways and weren't traveling very fast. And the sergeant says, "Well, let's stop here and rest." He says we need to kill a little time. And have you ever heard of a mortar shell? Mm-hmm. Do you know what a mortar shell is? It's a little explosive shell that fits inside of a tube. They have a pipe tube like this, and the shell may be about that long, and this goes up a ways, and you point it the direction you want it to go. Kind of goes up in the air, it lobs up and down like that, and you guess which direction you want to go in and how far, And then when you drop that thing down in, when it hits the bottom, it sends off a charge that shoots that shell out like that. Well, while we were sitting there, there's kind of a clearing there, a few coconut trees kind of scattered around, a bunch of others laying down, and fairly open, but, quite a few trees around. But anyway, we were sitting there resting, and we heard a pop. And somebody said, "That sounded like a knee mortar." Now, a knee mortar they called it a knee mortar. It was just a small one, only about that big around, inch and a half in diameter or something like that. And just a little lightweight one, for close work and stuff like that. And when it dropped down, we heard it pop. And about that time, we heard the shell explode. And it was down from us just a little ways. Somebody was shooting at us. For some reason, they didn't want us there. And anyway, that shell exploded down there. And just after it exploded, this guy that was sitting right next to me over here, he said, "Ouch, that's hot." I looked over there, and he had a piece of metal shrapnel, a diamond-shaped piece of shrapnel, pegged up in his forehead right between his eyebrows. And it was, because of a small shell, it was made out of thin metal. It was designed to cut rather than knock you down. It was diamond-shaped. It was sticking out in his forehead, and when it hit him, he reached up and grabbed it to pull it out, and it was hot. And when metal travels through the air fast, it generates heat. When the astronauts, come back in their space shuttle, it gets just terrifically hot, just coming through the air. Well, that's what made it hot. And anyway, it flew across in front of my eyes, I guess out about that far, something like that, and hit him. And there's another guy sitting over about where you are over there, had a small pair of pliers, and he came over there and took all that and pulled it out of his head and said, "Here, do you want this for a souvenir?" And he said, "Well, not till it cools off." Sometimes dangerous things, can be funny. So anyway, we didn't hear any more activity, and we just stayed there a little bit. And so we finally we got the orders to move on. And so we got up to where my trail, like I was on the main highway, I mean the main trail, just a single file trail, but that was the main highway through there. And where it kind of rolled off to dip down into there, and I got right up there by the edge of it, and boy, everything broke loose. Machine gun fire just ahead of us right there, just, you know, and just blasting away like crazy, you know. Sure, a lot of racket, a lot of gunfire. What had happened, I guess, was that some people ahead of us had come up there and had hit a resistance pocket of the Japanese that had a tunnel dug along through the dirt on the opposite side of that ravine, and right fairly close to the surface went all along, and had little peepholes dug in it coming out. And there's a lot of ferns and stuff growing on there, so you couldn't see them. Have you ever been up through the Zion Tunnel up there? On the highway up through the Zion Tunnel?
No.
On the highway? Have you ever been up through there?
One of the big windows that let the light in the tunnel.
Did you look out the windows? Okay. Well, that's built the same way they built that tunnel, just behind the surface. Every so far, they dig a little peephole out. And they dig some more and put on them peepholes. And of course, they had men inside of there with machine guns to shoot out. Well, I was right front and center. There, and if you don't think that was kind of nervous, there's a coconut tree about that wide right there on the edge. But when all the shooting starts, you hit the ground. That's the first thing you do, is you hit the ground real fast and wait for orders as to what to do from your leaders, you know, and so on. And there wasn't anybody shooting at me, but I knew that they had it covered. Because that was the main trail down into that ravine, and I knew there was a bunch of enemy over there looking at me, but I didn't know exactly where they were. Well, there's a squad off on our right was coming up the bottom of the ravine, parallel to us, walking up that sandy bottom, and they hit the enemy first, just before we did, and all the shooting was at them over there. Now, it turned out they wounded one of our soldiers, but they were able to rescue him and get him back to the hospital and save his life. But there was sure a lot of shooting, and I'd hear the machine gun open up, you know, and think, well, I think it's over to the right of me a little bit, and I'd scoot around a few inches to try to hide behind that tree about that way. That's not much to hide behind, is it? And then I think, no, well, listen, sound like this one's over this way. I'll scoot back a few inches. And along about that time, two Army tanks came up alongside us over there. They were kind of coming along back behind us, and so that was part of the plan. You know what a tank is? It's like a bulldozer, but it has a gun out on the front of it, you know, and some machine guns besides that, I guess. And these two tanks, they're all armor, steel armor around them, or you can't hurt them inside. And they would shoot a shell about that big around, 76 millimeter shell, and when it would hit, it would explode where it hit. So when those tanks moved up, the enemy, they stopped shooting. They didn't want to tangle with those tanks, you know. They were hiding now. They weren't attacking us anymore. They were hiding. And our first sergeant, he had a bodyguard, was a Navajo guy that was carrying a VAR rifle just like the one I had. Sergeant had him along as a bodyguard. And anyway, those Indians, they had sharp eyes. And so the tank commander was a lieutenant that walked along beside the tank. And so those four guys were standing out there, and they were looking to try to find where those holes were, buried in the ferns. And they'd finally look around that old Navajo and say, yeah, I can see one out over there, I can see the hole out over there. And look at it, see right? Yeah. So the tank commander would give instructions with his little radio to the guys inside the tank of where it was, and get them to look at it. You see it? Yeah, we can see what you're looking at. They'd fire a shell, and they were back about 50 or 60 yards away, half the length of a football field, maybe away, no more than that.